Grace does not replace obedience. John 14:15. If ye love me, keep my commandments. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that grace replaced obedience, that we no longer have to keep the law. But when you look at the word, that's not what you see. Grace was never given to excuse disobedience. Grace was given to empower obedience. It provides the desire and the strength to walk out what Yah has already spoken. Because love is not separate from obedience. If we love Him, we will desire to align with what He said. Not out of pressure, but because we recognize this is the way. Again, grace does not replace obedience. John 14:15 continually reminds us, if ye love me, keep my commandments. When we really look at it, somewhere along the way, many people began to treat grace as if it removed the responsibility to obey Yah altogether. As if grace means do whatever you want and Yah understands. But that is not what the word teaches. And it's important that we slow down and really see this clearly. Because many people today love the idea of relationship with Yah, but resist the idea of obedience to Him. And yet, throughout the word, love and obedience are constantly connected together, not separated. 1 John 2:3-4. And hereby we do know that we know Him, if we keep His commandments. He that saith, I know Him, and keepeth not His commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. That is strong language, but it is the word of Yah. It's what Yahusha and the apostles taught throughout the New Testament. But notice, the word does not define knowing Him by emotions or thoughts alone, but by obedience in keeping His commandments. Not by church attendance or by how inspired we feel. It says we know Him if we keep His commandments, meaning obedience is essential to relationship. Obedience is the evidence of relationship with Yah. Yet somewhere along the way, people began treating obedience like bondage, while treating disobedience like freedom because of grace. But Yah never taught that. Sin is bondage. Disobedience is bondage. Confusion is bondage. But alignment with Yah brings life. And alignment can only occur when we obey Him. Romans 6:1-2. What shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound? Elohim forbid. How shall we that are dead to sin live any longer therein? Here's the question. How can we be dead to sin but still attached to it? Notice what the scripture points out. Grace was never permission to remain in rebellion. Paul immediately rejects the idea that grace should give us cover or make us feel comfortable continuing to live in sin. Grace was never meant to make us casual about disobedience. Grace was meant to help transform us out of it. This is where many misunderstand the purpose of grace entirely. Grace is not merely mercy after failure. It is also strength for transformation to stand. Strength to obey. Strength to resist. Strength to walk differently than the world. Strength to align with Yah. If obedience were impossible, then why would the word continually call us to it? Why would Yahushua say in Matthew 5:19, whosoever therefore shall break one of these least commandments and shall teach men so, he shall be called the least in the kingdom of heaven. But whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. Why would Scripture repeatedly call us to walk uprightly if Yah never intended for us to do so? Now, this is important. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. Obedience is essential, but it does not save us. We are not redeemed through our own perfection. We need Yahusha. We need the blood. We need mercy. We need grace because all have sinned. But grace does not remove the standard of obedience. Grace restores us back toward it. It is the difference between someone stumbling on a path and someone abandoning the path completely. Grace helps us get back up and continue walking with Yah. It does not redefine rebellion as acceptable towards righteousness. And honestly, many people today do not hate legalism. They hate correction. They can follow rules, but they can't receive correction because correction requires surrender. Correction requires humility. Correction requires us to admit that we were wrong. To admit that maybe I've inherited teachings that do not fully align with the word of Yah. Jeremiah 16:19 says, surely our fathers have inherited lies. And this is why we must return to Scripture carefully, asking the Ruach HaKodesh to reveal the truth of Yah's word to us deep within our hearts, not just repeating traditions, not just repeating culture, not just repeating what became popular even in religion, but asking this, what actually is written, so we can stand firmly aligned in relationship and obedience with Yah. Yahushua never taught people to ignore the commandments of Yah. In fact, he often corrected people for worshiping Yah with their mouths, but not their heart, for replacing the commandments with traditions of men. Mark 7:6-9, Yahushua answered them, how right Yeshayahu was when he prophesied about you. You are hypocrites, just as he wrote. These people say Elohim, honor me with their words, but their heart is really far away from me. It is no use for them to worship me because they teach human rules as though they were my laws. You put aside Elohim's command and obey human teachings. And Yahushua continued, you have a clever way of rejecting Elohim's law in order to uphold your own teaching. So today, we must be careful that we're not doing the same thing, creating systems that comfort and excuse disobedience instead of confronting, correcting, and calling people into alignment with Yah. Now again, this is not about striving to earn Yah's love. That is important to understand because true obedience does not flow from fear. It flows from love. Yahushua said, if ye love me, keep my commandments. Not if you fear me enough, not if you perform perfectly, but if you love me. Because when we truly love Yah, obedience stops feeling like oppression and more like a joy. It begins to feel like alignment, like trust, like wisdom, like protection. The same way a loving parent gives instruction to protect a child, Yah gives instruction to protect us spiritually, emotionally, physically, and mentally. Not to destroy us, not to restrict us unfairly, but because He understands what leads to life and what leads to destruction. Many people, they want the promises of Yah without the alignment to Yah. They want peace without surrender, blessing without obedience, relationship without transformation. But covenant has always involved alignment. Amos 3:3. Can two walk together without agreeing on the direction? Deuteronomy 30:19. Today I have given you the choice between life and death, between blessings and curses. Now I call on heaven and earth to witness the choice you make. Oh, that you would choose life so that you and your descendants might live. Yah has always called His people to choose His ways, not because He is cruel, but because He is good. The choice is yours to make. And maybe, for some listening right now, this teaching is confronting areas we have justified for a long time. Maybe areas where we said grace covers it, while continuing in something the Word already addressed as sin. Conviction is not condemnation. It's the Ruach nudging you to get into alignment with Yah. Yah corrects those He loves. Proverbs 3:12. For whom Yahuwah loveth, He corrected, even as a father the son in whom He delighteth. Correction is mercy, because correction gives us the opportunity to realign. So no, grace does not replace obedience. Grace empowers obedience. It gives us the desire and the strength to walk out what Yah has spoken. And the closer we grow to Him, the more our heart begins to say, I don't want my way anymore. I want yours. So pause and ask Yah, have I mistaken grace for permission instead of receiving it as power to obey?